wait till the third round to pick. What does that mean for you guys? How much more work do you have to put in knowing you have to wait that much longer?
I don't think you put in any more work. Like the work goes like we would have our players ranked in our eyes like we were picking 10th or whatever. So they're all ranked. It doesn't really change. Puts a little bit more importance on, getting it done. Try to encourage a little bit more background work or, in-depth work because it's, in a way, it's not really any more important, but in a way it is when you don't have the first couple picks.
Hefty on the Manitoba picks. Were your Manitoba scouts working a little harder this season, or is that just coincidence?
No, that's just where they fell. I mean, I think we put a little bit of emphasis on the prairies, just because some of the people that I think BC was a little bit lighter this year, one, and two, some of the players talked about or going to or were using the NCAA route, so we chose maybe a little bit more where we were pretty sure that there's nobody not going to interested in coming.
So what can you tell me about Cohen Clausen, your first pick?
Hard-working two-way centerman, played a little bit of left wing, but we had him ranked pretty high, and the guys were excited to get him.
Just your thoughts about the entire draft class as a whole for the Pats?
It's hard to say, but we're happy with it. I mean, everybody could say this. Like, there's, at the end of the day, I'm sure every team was able to choose guys in a round that they had them ranked a round or two earlier. Like, that's just the way it goes because everybody sees it different. We had, the majority of our first two rounds off the board before our first pick. Like, so it doesn't really mean anything other than that we were able to do that. But I think that there's some depth to the thing. We put a little bit more emphasis on forwards. We're really happy with the first two guys we took up front that, they're pretty surefire players.
Is it always best player available, or do you take into consideration, positional needs when you're drafting?
His best player, but if we took two forwards, a D and another forward. So after that, we were looking to take a D. So just depending on how many you take. But like I said earlier, we took those forwards. We liked them, and then we had to make sure we got 2 or 3 D later.
What about goaltenders? Because you did take a goalie. Is that something you try to do every draft too? Is to try to get at least one goalie?
Yeah, I think more or less. There seemed to be a little bit of lack of depth there in the draft this year in our eyes. And when 3 or 4 went, it was just, we thought there wasn't really going to be any difference. We could wait a little bit later and take what was there.
Maybe I should ask about Cameron Kuzma. He's got some size. He was your second, third round pick. What can you tell us about him?
Big, good size already, pretty good skill. Tyrell had a lot of first-hand looks at him this year. He was playing there in that where Tyrell works, and Tyrell really thinks he's a top player. And as we looked into him and somewhat limited views we had of him, but some views we had of him, we all agreed on that.
As a GM, is this one of your favorite days of the year?
Yeah, it's an exciting day because you're drafting for the future. It's just a different kind of excitement than, say, the first game of the season coaching or the playoff games. Trade deadline can be mixed to how exciting that is. But yeah, this is in a way a different type of playoff.
At what point do you have conversations with some of these guys? Do you wait till rookie camp, or do you call them up today, or?
Oh no, Dale or myself, more liable to be Dale. We'll talk to everybody in the next day, 24, 48 hours. Reach out to them. We talked to Parker yesterday, Trache and the Ram kid from Arizona. We spoke to both of them. So no, we'll be in touch with them as quick as we can be. That a little bit depends on schedule. Dale's 10-hour drive back to Cranbrook tomorrow. He should be able to get a lot of people in before he hits the mountains.
You mentioned Dale. I just maybe wanted to ask about how much credit you give the scouting staff, Dale, Rusty, the whole group on the job that they did leading into this draft.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a thankless job, but scouting at this level is extremely hard. It's hard at the NHL level when you're looking at 17-year-olds / 18-year-olds. It's harder at this level when you're trying to project, what 14-year-olds are going to be like. And so that in itself is something. We have lots of emphasis on talking to the parents or seeing the parents, trying to gauge what size the kids might get to, amongst other things, including direction of what they're interested in. So they put a lot of time and a lot of work in it. And, we don't have 4 or 5 scouts full-time doing it. We have a lot of part-time guys that have other jobs. That's what it all is, except for Dale. And so he puts in a lot of miles and a lot of work and a lot of hours, and has lots of responsibility with that. But it's a long job, and there'll be a tournament in June somewhere to go to. There's not much break, for the teams, for the scouts. I know there's one here in July where scouts will be attending. So yeah, it's pretty nonstop for us, or for him especially, but organizations as is playing. I mean, kids are playing hockey now 11 or 12 months a year.
Do you think it'll be because kids are playing a lot more hockey? Will it be as common that you see these undrafted players still come out of the woodworks and be amazing kind of sleepers that you would have never picked?
Oh yeah, I think so. I don't think that changes. I think that because they're so young, they improve and they get bigger. So, we saw it last year. Cole Temple had a bit of I would say, tough June camp. He was better in September, and then he was a lot better in December, and we called him up. So they change. They get stronger. They're 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds just hitting puberty where they, they're maturing physically. They're practicing, working on their skills to a large extent. So the ones that aren't drafted are doing the same thing to some extent, because they want to be players, or they had a real interest in it, or they were growing into their bodies when they're 14. Maybe that's why they weren't drafted, and all of a sudden when they hit 16 they're listed by somebody because they've matured into their bodies. So it's something that you have to stay on top of all the time.
Maybe just to wrap up with yesterday's first-round pick in the U.S. draft, Parker Trottier. I assume that you obviously would know his grandfather, given that he's a Hockey Hall of Famer, big-time history. What can you tell us about Parker? And I guess have you had a chance to talk with Brian recently?
I talked to Brian about 3 weeks ago. Well, it was when I was in Salmon Arm, whenever that was. Yeah, and I think from all indications are when our guys saw Parker at the John Reed tournament, and a little bit since in Minnesota at something, and when I talked to Brian, he's a chip off the grandfather block. Big time player. Brian was obviously known for his outstanding skill and stats and Stanley Cups and leadership, but Brian was a hard player, and from what I gather, Parker's a hard player.